Talking politics today.
I think it's not going to be highly rated. I think it's going to be, you're going to watch it for 10 or 15 minutes. People are going to get bored and turn it off.
It's the Donald Trump, talking about tonight's Democratic presidential debate. We're talking with the former Utica Mayor Tim Julian today on the show. Tim, how are you?
Very good this morning. How about you, Dave?
Good. Thanks for sticking in with us today. Donald Trump is causing quite a stir politically, and I heard that clip there about what he feels about the Democratic presidential debate tonight.
Yes.
What do you think about Trump, and what do you think is going to happen tonight at the Democratic debate?
Look, I think whether you like Trump or you hate Trump, what Trump has done is Trump has brought a lot of subjects to the top of the surface that normally would be just completely disregarded in these debates. And, a lot of the politics sometimes is called a contact sport, but many times is not, especially on a national level. This gentlemanly backslapping, oh, you're great. No, you're great too, but here's why I'm just a little bit better than you, and that's why I should get the consideration, has gone by the wayside with Trump in this race.
No holds barred.
No holds barred. And, what's interesting is that, people should be brought to the forefront of this. This is what we lose when we see, like in Oneida County right now, where we're going through so many different elections that are unopposed. We are losing insight from these people. We are, allowing someone like an Anthony Picenti to state, we're not going to lower the taxes even though we have the surplus. Here's because I said so. It's because it's not good. Without someone else on the other side saying we should lower them, and here's all the reasons we can lower them. Here's why. The same thing with the Utica County Comptroller and Joe Timpano. He hasn't, just chimed in and said whether it's a good idea or not. We should be hearing these people's opinions. These are our elected officials. These are the people we pay. We pay a pretty decent salary to let us to allow them to govern us each year. Yeah. And we should be hearing from them about this. So I think what Trump has done is Trump has brought in that type of discourse that you wouldn't normally have, whether it's about illegal immigration. But let's face it, he brought that to the forefront very strongly. Whether it's about, basically any of these things that he's talked about. And I think that that's important. I think as we look at these things going forward, Trump is going to be the guy who, he's a button pusher. He's out there pushing people's buttons. And I think the tension from Jeb Bush at the last debate was just so thick you could have cut it with a knife and comical to watch. And,
sure.
And what's interesting is when people talk about this, and whether you talk about a Carly Fiorina who they said, oh, Trump said this about her, Trump said that about her, do they actually think that when they get in office, people are going to say nothing but good things about them?
Right.
So I think that is actually helping us as the American public in part of the vetting process and seeing that how do these people stand under pressure? Because if you cannot put up with the pressure of Donald Trump calling you ugly or calling you fat or calling you any of these other things that he's called these people, how do you think you're going to put up with Putin
right.
coming in and saying we're going to take you out here or take you out there?
Yeah, competition makes everybody better. We've been talking about that a lot at home too. We were reading an article about how kids are less resilient these days because they're told
everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
They get everything they want, and they're never challenged anymore. Right. And what's going to happen when they get into the real world? They're going to be challenged, and things aren't going to go so well for them. And competition makes everybody better. As for having the discourse on both sides, I'm all for that. The hospital, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I'm glad to hear people like you talk about it, Jim Brock talk about it, and I'm also glad to hear people like Anthony Brindisi talk about it too, because I don't know all the facts, and I want all the facts.
You need that discourse. You need that discourse, and that's what's been missing from that from the Mohawk Valley Health Services all the time, is the discourse from that. It's just like, no, we're going to put it there.
Right.
We decided.
Sure.
This is it.
Right.
We need the vote.
Yes.
It was unanimous. That's all you need to know. Just sit over here.
As for the Democratic debate tonight, we had a little interesting discussion earlier on the show. I'm thinking that it's not going to go so well because Hillary Clinton doesn't have, she might want to throw punches, but there's no real punching bag to throw it at. There's no villain, so to speak, that's been established, at least on the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, philosophically, they're both pretty much in the same boat. So, it's difficult to throw those punches as someone who, part and parcel, you're on the same team with. So, right. It's tough. It's difficult to debate a woman because essentially, if you go and you try to go too strong against her, you're going to look like a bad guy. And I think it was demonstrated when we just talked about Trump and Fiorina and the fact that it's always going to look personal no matter what. On the flip side of the coin is a lot of what Hillary Clinton and her support from the female base, I think, is that, she's a woman. Well, if she comes across acting too strongly, then that may alienate some of that base as well. So it's really a very difficult dancing act, and it's unfortunate that we just can't look at, the resume and like a position paper from all these candidates instead of them trying to cater to the soundbite of the, no offense, but the media.
When it's over emotionally.
Yeah. And I think that's where this might get a little lost. And yeah, I agree with Trump. It's probably going to be very boring. It's probably going to be a very boring thing.
Right. We're talking to former Utica Mayor Tim Julian on the Talk of the Town, 100.7 FM WUTQ. More local issues we wanted to touch on with you, right, Jay?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to throw this out there. I mean, we're seeing, this race here for, the mayoral seat in Utica popping back up soon. And one of the candidates, Lula Pola, former mayor of Utica, prior to your term. Any thoughts of yourself jumping back in that ring?
No.
You don't want to think about it.
Reference Lula Pola on that one. Say no. I don't want to be. Oh yeah.
And
Tim and Lou were walking around.
I guess. And continuing with that, and we talked about some of the development and things downtown. Do you think we're staying conducive? Do you think we're following the master plan? Do you think we're doing it in the right fashion?
Well, I think we follow the master plan up until the point of the hospital.
Okay. Right.
And then all of a sudden, that master plan goes right out the window. Mm-hmm. And, so I think that's a big question. It's a big question. And, the big thing about the hospital, we'll just briefly touch on this again. We're talking about $300 million of a 600 to 700, if not close to $1 billion project. Mm-hmm. And money goes quick. One of the things we look at a couple of years ago is the ability we had to put in a parking garage on the east side of Genesee Street. We're going to put it in behind the Adirondack Bank building. Got $1.5 million from at the time Governor Pataki, $1.5 million from at the time Senator Meyer, and $1.5 million from at the time Assemblywoman DeStito. And Bullard came in and said, I got $5 million for your parking garage. We said, holy cow, this is fantastic. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a reality. We're going to make this happen. We're going to put a parking garage back here. These buildings are going to be able to be filled. The city center building at the time now, Utica College is in there. We're going to be able to fill that. Well, as we started to get the monies in, part of the stipulations with the $5 million of Bullard's money was we had to build this transportation center as part of it. And essentially, we started looking at it and putting where are we going to put the buses, where are we going to put the transportation hub, how are we going to do this? That chewed through that $5 million pretty darn quick.
Kind of jammed down our throat, if you ask me.
Jammed down our throat. And the interesting thing about federal money is if you don't take it, once you accept it, you have to accept it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
What do you think about the location of the bus garage or the terminal?
Again, another project for the greater good of the community that took property taxes off the city of Utica rolls. And I think that anytime we look at things like that, there needs to start to be some sort of a give back to the city of Utica for this. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to look at. When people talk about the tax-exempt properties in the city of Utica, and yes, a lot of them are schools, a lot of them are churches, a lot of them are parkland, but at the same time, we can't say that we need to put this hospital downtown because it's closer to the services. Well, it's close to the bus line. You're going to get a bus line to the hospital no matter where it goes. You can put the hospital in Trenton, and you're going to get a bus line there, obviously. They built Consumer Square. A bus line goes there. There was no bus going to Consumer Square when it was an open field.
Right.
So certainly, you're going to have a bus going to the hospital no matter where that is. And again, it goes back to, well, we're a poor city. Well, are we a city that needs to have a hospital in the middle of it because we need to continue that spiral of this type of clientele? Okay, we're going to have poor clientele at a hospital. You're going to have poor clientele at a hospital no matter where you are. It doesn't mean it needs to be in the center part of the city or in the downtown business district or any of these places like that. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's one of the things we need to look at is that, is the transportation and the amount of infrastructure necessary. And downtown infrastructure, make no bones about it, is very old and very worn. And when you look at whether it's the streets and the underpinnings of the streets and everything that goes underneath that, you're going to have some major, major issues there when you start relocating some of these problems. One of the issues we had on the site behind the the Gold Bath and Washington Court site, I mean, that was a great big parcel. A lot of businesses were looking at that and saying, oh, geez, we'd love to have this parcel. What we didn't realize at the time was that the entire electrical supply for downtown Utica runs right through the middle of that parcel underground. And in order to do that, you'd have to relocate all those wires. Can you imagine?
And that's I think that's one of the topics that Jim Brock brought up, an opponent of the hospital. What are we going to do with the infrastructure there? Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a major undertaking. Yeah. But back to something you mentioned. You mentioned Consumer Square, and that kind of happened during your administration.
Yeah, I think it was right around that time.
Yeah. Do you now? During that, we were all gung ho and going back, I think, to the idea of urban sprawl. So we spread ourselves out,
right.
And now we're looking, as we're talking here this morning, coming back to the city. Do you think that is kind of changing? We're coming full circle, and we want to have more businesses, more walkability, more life, more opportunity downtown?
Yeah, certainly you want to have that, and it's trendy now, which is the important thing. We have to ride that trend certainly while we can, and have that downtown. But if we look at and you look at all these the loft apartments and things like that are going on now, and I mean we commissioned that study back I think 2005 or 2006. The study that said Utica can support loft apartments. Here's how many. Here's the locations, and this is all coming to fruition. Which is
few
great.
and far between back then.
Which is great. It has some great private examples of it, but nothing that was in the public and people were able to go out and access for themselves. So I think that you do see that. But what we also need is we need those ancillary services. I was very excited to see Cristiano's when they're taking the old Rite Aid building and making a market out of that, and something that you can have. Because the idea behind the loft apartments and living downtown is the fact that you live downtown. Your home is downtown. You go out and you walk over to this breakfast place or this newspaper shop, and you grab a cup of coffee and you sit there. And Utica Coffee certainly allows for something like that. Having Bite Bakery, all these places that have sprung up and that have been there are now going to have this whole new audience. And you do that, and you're able to go out and have dinner downtown, and you're able to walk to your job.
Yes.
From your house downtown to your job downtown. And I think that that's the exciting stuff about this is you're going to have that. And the only thing they need a car for is the weekends.
Right.
And this is more of a real city atmosphere. A couple of years ago in the Ride for Missing Children, I was coming up Genesee Street, and this always sticks in my mind is that the Uptown Theater was showing the Da Vinci Code, and on in front of the theater there was protesters holding up signs saying this is sacrilege, this is bad, you're going to burn, all these things like that. And across the street was this other group of protesters, and they had signs up saying it's just a movie, get over it, and things like that. And the thing I thought about that is here I am, you Ride for Missing Children, just rode 100 miles, you're driving up Genesee Street, and you're looking on both sides of it, and here's this protest going on. And I thought this is pretty cool. That was the time that I thought that Utica had kind of topped that hill and actually became a real city. When you got protesters over something
people
like
that care, yeah,
I think that's that's something that says that. I mean, last night the Hamilton College kids were up at the Columbus Monument saying, this is we're going to take this monument because it's mine now.
Columbus Day versus the Native American Day or whatever. And
I think anytime you see that, that's the stuff that makes up a city. I mean, the blanching of America is not what makes up the city that you see as we start to go in some of the urban sprawl. What makes up a city is the fact that you have all these different interests coming together and actually working together.